Welcome back. You're watching the India Development Debate with me, Nayantara Rai, in New Delhi. We're going to put the spotlight on the hottest sector that we have at the moment, the telecom sector, which has been grabbing the headlines for all kinds of reasons. Just yesterday, you heard Bharti Airtel and Vodafone Idea, the gap of a few hours, just announced that they're going to be increasing their tariffs come 1st of December. That news was applauded on by the Dalal Street, where we actually saw a rally in telecom stocks. And today, the disruptor, Reliance Jio, has also announced in the coming weeks it will be raising tariffs. It's not given a date the way Vodafone Idea as well as Bharti Airtel have. We're of course seeing a dirty war once again between the incumbents, that means Vodafone Idea as well as Bharti Airtel on one side and Reliance Jio on the other. In the midst of all of this, you had a Supreme Court verdict which dealt a 90,000 crore rupee blow to the telecom sector as far as the adjusted gross revenues go. We are being told that the telecom companies, present and past, that have gone under or been sold out will be moving the Supreme Court with their review petition. All eyes on the Department of Telecommunications. Will the DOT also file a review petition and urge the court to review its stance as far as adjusted gross revenues goes? In the midst of all of this, we have a high-level committee chaired by the Cabinet Secretary looking into a relief package for the telecom sector. Today, we will be discussing the telecom sector in detail, and joining me on the phone line is Rajan Matthew, the Director General of the COAI. We're also being joined by Sanjeev Bhasin, Director at IFL Securities, Kunal Bajaj, Independent Consultant and CEO at Cloud Xtel, as well as the former Secretary of the TRAI, Sudhir Gupta. Rajan Matthew, I'll come to you first. I appreciate that you're joining us on the phone line. I do believe that you had a wedding to attend, so thank you for that. You have been facing a lot of wrath of Reliance Jio, which has been calling in, which has written that is the COAI behaving unfairly and only listening to Vodafone Idea as well as Bharti Airtel. Having said that, you now have a situation where all three telecom companies are looking to hike tariffs. How much, we still don't know. But having said that, is this an important signal that is coming in that now that Reliance Jio has 50% market share, the other two are commanding the balance 50, the days of these kind of cheap tariffs are over, or do you suspect it's just going to be marginal in nature?
So I think, Nayantara, that for a while, several quarters have been asking the question, what is the industry itself doing other than knocking on the doors of the government for relief? And one of the areas that was highlighted was the whole area of this hyper-competitive race to the bottom in terms of pricing. And so I think the industry has now responded to that concern from investors and analysts and basically understood that you really do have to do something internally. And analysts and folks who have looked at the industry have talked about an increase in the ARPU by some 20% from its present level at around 124, 125 rupees in order to be even begin to be financially viable. So I think the industry has taken those concerns realistically and is trying to do something. And I think the fact that there's unison now indicates that there is truly a financial distress that people in some quarters thought was a mirage. So I think the unity talks about the reality of the situation today.
Kunal Bajaj, if I could come to you now, good evening. We're still waiting to see what happens as far as adjusted gross revenues verdict at the Supreme Court goes, what the government collective stance is going to be. Internet service providers are now being seen as collateral damage, where non-telecom PSUs like GAIL and Oil India and Power Grid would have to shell out big bucks, and that was never the government's intention. But having said that, is it at all fair for the government to even be looking at a relief package? The reason I'm going to ask you this is, and we've had the finance minister on record talking about they don't want to see any telecom company come down. But just a few months ago, we didn't see intervention by the government to save, for example, airlines.
So Nayantara, good evening. Obviously, I think the different industries require a different kind of analysis. The challenge that we're facing today is that if we technically look at the ruling that the Supreme Court came out with, it was basically on a law and a policy that was written in the 1990s. The telecom industry has come a very long way since then. I mean, back then we were on 2G, there was no data. We've gone from 2G to 3G to 4G. We were talking about a spectrum which was allocated. We've now had several spectrum auctions which have been successfully run. Back in that day, we had just several million mobile subscribers at 16 rupees a minute. So the whole industry has really changed. And the Supreme Court ruled on what they basically read as law, which was written at that time. And throughout this period of the past 15 odd years that this has all been under debate, the DOT has not been able to basically change the policies because it's been sub judice. And TRAI has come out with recommendations saying that AGR should not be interpreted this way, that AGR should be modified in the best interest of the industry. And I think basically it comes down to a policy call. And governments have in the past, governments have done this as well when opposing parties have been in rule, gone back and basically said that if a policy needs to be changed, even retrospectively, for the betterment of the industry and also for the better interest of the nation, then it can be done. It's not about overruling or overturning a Supreme Court decision. It's not about overturning a law. It's about taking a look at what's required from a policy perspective for the continuity of the industry going forward.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you as far as the tariff hikes go, but if I could go across to Sanjeev Bhasin. And before I do that, I would like my producer to also show you the kind of stock price reaction we've seen on the last 7 days. Since Friday, the stocks have been all over the place. We've seen a very strong rally also come in since 24 hours ago of Vodafone and Bharti Airtel announcing their intent to hike tariffs come 1st of December. Today, of course, you've seen Reliance Industries hit an all-time high with market capitalization. Sanjeev Bhasin, when you look at these particular counters, and I've got to hear from a market perspective, the markets would like obviously nothing better than to see the average revenue per user go up, debt levels come down. But how realistic is that expectation of the market? Because it is still hyper-competitive. Bharti Airtel and Vodafone will have to realize that while they may raise tariffs, it could provide an opportunity for Jio to increase its market share. Or should it be a case of choosing quality over quantity?
Yeah, hi. So, you'll have to take it in three parts. There was this method to the madness. Madness, if I may say, that you've had price decimation of the worst, and it was only the customer who was actually laughing his way to the bank. I think that the method to the madness who started it is now ending it, and now with just 2.5 players left, I think they are only going to laugh their way to the bank over a period of time. Data is the new gold, and it's evident that prices had reached the base level. So I am extremely positive that maybe the worst is over, since it's now just a 2.5-legged race, and all three have shown their intent that prices are definitely going to be rising upwards. On the other hand, you realize that spectrum charges, the AGR contention, all that had added to the woes of banks. And along with that, Nayantara, now it means that banks will be seeing a lot of proxy on the upside, given that prices are going to stabilize. So it means for the economy as a whole, some of the laggards like steel, where SR Steel's ruling, or this telecom woes has played out brilliantly. You've seen in the last 1 week, Vodafone has more than doubled, Bharti is up 33%, and lo and behold, Reliance has hit 9.5 lakh crore of market cap, with now 10 lakh crore being on the anvil in the first week of January. So extremely, the bears have got caught on the wrong side. An extremely bullish stance by the telecom sector has played out.
Okay, so you think the sector has bottomed out, Sanjeev Bhasin, in a nutshell. That's what your big message is.
Correct. Like I said, there are just 2.5 players now left, and they all have deep pockets and they've weathered the storm. And if prices are going to rise, it's like I ask you, Nayantara, If Sunsilk started to raise prices of shampoo over the next 3 months, you're not going to change it. Personal comfort is now something which is comparable to data, and the inelasticity of price tells me that data is here to stay. So a marginal tinkering with prices over a period of time will get well absorbed. The customer has had the best time in the last 18 months, and it's about time you started to charge more. Globally, the price of data which you are consuming today or what you're paying for is absolutely low, and I think only the service quality is going to improve, particularly on the 4G side.
Okay, I'm going to now go across to the former secretary of the TRAI, Mrs. Sudhir Gupta, who's joining us. Good evening, sir. You've seen the ups and the downs, Mr. Gupta. It has been cyclical. We've seen a lot of consolidation which has taken place. Sanjeev Bhasin is not saying that 3 players, but 2.5 that are left, but that is, of course, his opinion. But, sir, now that we will see the telecom companies go as far as the tariffs go, which is, of course, under forbearance, the question I want to ask you is there's going to be a lot of attention on not just the Department of Telecommunications, but also on the TRAI as far as tariffs go, and the other burning issue which has to do with interconnect usage charge. There has been a rebalancing of sorts. Jio is now boasting of a 50% market share. How crucial is that also going to be?
Well, I think that presently the telecom sector crisis is worst as far as the last 20 years are concerned, and there is a urgent need for a policy intervention both by the regulator and the government. Till now, despite saying opposite, but the government has always been thinking about his revenue maximization as far as the telecom sector is concerned. But now today the telecom sector is the critical infrastructure sector for all other sectors, be it health, be it insurance, be it finance, be it any other sector. And therefore the government has to change its view, and like any other utility or critical sectors like road or water or electricity, it should stop treating telecom sector as the sector for its deficit or for other purpose, and it should treat this sector as the most important sector for the digital revolution. Just see our neighbor, which China, which we always like to compare ourselves. Till date in China, the spectrum is given free of cost, as we were doing before 2010. So what I'm trying to say is the government has to completely think out of the box and do a lot of things in short term and in the long term, so that the sector is again in the green and is able to feed other sectors for its growth.
Okay. So if I could now go, very valid point that we need the government to think out of the box as well. Rajan Matthew, if I could come back to you, so far the relief package seems to be what we heard 12 months ago, 12 to 18 months ago, which was to lower the spectrum charges. Now they're talking about a 2-year moratorium and of course reduce that current 8% license fee. Is that really going to be enough, or is it what the former TRAI secretary, Mr. Gupta, is talking about, that the government is looking at the telecom sector as a way to manage its fisc? It could get a bonanza of sorts as far as AGR goes. I don't know if the 5G spectrum auction can realistically take place in this environment, but is that really how the government views the telecom sector?
So, Nayantara, I think NDPC, which was the National Telecom Policy of 2018, reversed that whole expectation of government. And by the way, that document had the input of all of the stakeholders and was approved by the cabinet. That document very clearly says that going forward, in order to meet the Honorable Prime Minister's strategy on digital inclusion and digital expansion, and all of those other programs. The telecom sector was to be nurtured. It was not to be looked at as an extractive industry where you're going to maximize revenue. So that is very clearly articulated as a policy. The unfortunate part is that that policy hasn't seen the light of day in terms of implementation. So I think it's time to move forward in terms of looking at what the government can do to reduce the levies and the issues in terms of burdening the finances of the industry. So the first thing that we've always said is that please look at the exorbitant debt burden that is on the industry, triggered principally by the prices that have come out of the spectrum auction. So that needs to be rationalized and reconfigured. And the second thing is then to look at these revenue share type arrangements. And the first point that I would like to make is that it is time for the AGR to go away completely. It is a redundant carryover from a previous revenue share regime, which should have gone away when operators paid for their spectrum up front. So our position is do away with this. It'll get away with the whole mess. Notwithstanding that, if the AGR can't be done away with, then redefine it going forward in terms of what the TDSAT and others have indicated, reduce license fee, reduce spectrum usage charge, and put this together as a holistic package, which obviously now the industry is also doing in terms of tariffs. And I think that sets the industry on the way for healthy financial outcomes.
Okay, so let's see if that actually happens anytime soon. We have seen the finance minister promise a speedy solution to all of this. Kunal Bajaj, if I could come to you now. We've seen a few panelists believe that the worst is over, bottoming out has taken place, the hyper-competitiveness is over. We also see some brokerage reports which said, look at Jio, it recently hiked tariffs by 12%. The 12% is actually 10 rupees a month. How significant, as an expert, do you really think that Vodafone and Airtel can afford to announce price hikes that are going to be significant enough to improve their balance sheet, where one of the operators, it's all about survival? And let's also not forget, Rel Jio, when it came out with its press statement today, unlike Vodafone and Airtel, has not provided any timeline for when it's going to increase its tariff. Clearly, it wants to see what these two are going to be up to, and then it's going to decide on its own hike, its own quantum.
So Nayantara, a couple of points on that. I think if we look at the health of the existing telecom operators, without any substantial movement on by the government on the AGR ruling, then tariff hikes are certainly not going to be enough. So, that was your first question. That is a 5% or a 10% move enough to be able to have a substantial impact? If we're still talking about the entire fees plus penalties plus interest on penalties having to be paid, even if that happens to be deferred over a period of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or whatever is being discussed in the government right now, the fact that that payment is going to continue to linger on is in itself going to be a major problem. So something needs to be done about the majority of that payment. And one way to look at that is just to basically look at the penalties and the interest on the penalties. And if we take, if we sort of move on to the next step of your question, which is a 5% increase enough or is a 10% increase enough? And also what happens with Jio. I think Jio actually took the first step in effectively raising tariffs already. And when they started coming out with the IUC top-up and the IUC tariff, and then they came out with the IUC inclusive bundles that started being sold into their entire prepaid plan, that effectively was already a step towards a tariff increase. And that has actually while it initially created a lot of backlash and it created a lot of, just angst amongst Jio customers, but that has also now been adopted by the customer base. And what we heard earlier being stated about price elasticity around customers today with data usage, that price increase has effectively already been absorbed into the industry. So I think Jio is looking to watch potentially what is going to be the order of magnitude of the tariff increases that Airtel and VI are going to roll out. Is it really going to be in the form of prices being brought up, or is it going to be?
Because we're running out of time, and this question is going to be very futuristic, it's very disruptive in nature, but we're also talking about survival of companies. At the same time, when we're reading all these stories about how the likes of Facebook, for example, are trying out this new technology in Africa and Australia, where I got these drones and they're showering Wi-Fi connection over there, saying that's the future of telecom. it's also going to be about survival for these companies too. It's not just about now, but look what else they have to achieve and look what else they have to spend on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Technology is going to continue to evolve, and there's always going to be new things coming along. I mean, everyone's already talking about 5G, and we've barely seen the maturity of 4G. But I think that is part of the evolution of this, and that's why we need a robust industry. So what what Mr. Sudhir Gupta said earlier about the government thinking about this as a core infrastructure product and a core infrastructure industry, which is actually enabling all the other industries. Everything from finance and health to startups to everything else that we see today. So yeah, new technologies will come. There will be new spectrum bands. There will be more spectrum auctions. There will be a lot of disruption that's happening. But if you have a healthy telecom industry, all of that can be absorbed. And whether it's Facebook or Google or Amazon or anyone else who's working on these technologies, I think our telecom operators know about all of this and they know how to keep up with it. And it's just a matter of ensuring that they're healthy enough to be able to continue to offer the best technologies and services in India. And therefore, 5%, 10% actually is quite a bit, and it is going to be enough if we can take care of some of the government overhang.
I take your point. I'm running out of time. I'm going to thank all of my panelists, but I'm going to give the final comment to Sanjeev Bhasin only because it's 10 p.m. and tomorrow Reliance Industries is going to be focused on, because it came out with its price hike announcement post-market hours. We already saw the reaction today on Vodafone and Bharti Airtel. Mr. Bhasin, has that already been priced in, you think? Because it would only natural that if two players are going to increase, the third one would as well. And look where the market capitalization, we saw see an all-time high today.
Well, fingers crossed, we are looking at 10 lakh crore of market cap, the first Indian company to do that, and Reliance has truly been a leader. Also, who knows, we are 50 points away back from 12,000. So Nayantara, fingers crossed, I think the telecoms are going to lead from the front. And like the other panelists said, the government's message is clear. Don't kill the golden goose which lays eggs, Give them time, waive the penalties, waive the interest, elongate the payment of AGR and reduce spectrum. And you'll have a really healthy banking system and data usage. So I think tomorrow we are definitely looking at 12,000 and Reliance at new highs is on the cards.
Okay, so with that, we are out of time. My producer is telling me to wrap up. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time out. One was at a wedding, the other one had to babysit, and I know all of that. So thank you so much for joining us live right here on this edition of India Development Debate. The big message to the government from all of our panelists, and it's a unanimous verdict. Stop milking the telecom sector. Give it a chance to survive. My thanks so much.